Well, here we go. Welcome to episode 3 of the Multifarious Man podcast. I am your host, Jay Vincent. It is Saturday, October 3rd, 2015, and this is episode 3, Must See TV or It's New to You. If this is your first episode, thank you for taking the time to check it out, and if you've listened before, welcome back. On this episode of the Multifarious Man podcast, we're going to be talking about whatever happened to must-see or appointment television. This is back when there was a night of the week where everyone gathered around the television to watch, whatever the new hot show was, and then you talked about it the next day. Water cooler television, they sometimes talked about. Also, we'll give a rundown of some returning TV shows that I like, such as Modern Family, Blackish, The Goldbergs, The Blacklist, and also Grimm. And maybe we'll have a few more surprises. But here we go. Episode 3. Numerous and varied, greatly diverse and manifold. All the things I want to say that never been told. Dina Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand. I'm the multifarious man. Welcome back, and as always, that is probably the corniest theme in show business, but hey, until I come up with another one, that's what I'm going to be sticking with. All right, so the first thing we wanted to talk about was, of course, appointment television. Back in the 80s, NBC had this whole campaign about must-see TV. This is when, things like The Cosby Show and later on Seinfeld and Friends were on. It was one night a week. Everybody watched what was on, and the next day, you would talk to your friends about it. Probably when our parents were younger, maybe it was the Mary Tyler Moore Show, or maybe it was I Love Lucy, going back even further. Maybe in the early 80s, it might have been the night that you watched Magnum P.I. But it seemed like every night there was some sort of, big night where people had some big show that they watched. Now, in modern times with all of the different options for, DVR and recording, shows, and, this is even more than what you had in the 80s when you would record stuff to, VHS, trying to age myself. But now with streaming options like Netflix and Hulu, and also the DVRs that you have built into your cable box, it seems that, people have favorite shows, but when they watch them, that's what's changed dramatically. There's no more you watch it, on a certain day and then you talk about it the next day. Or is there? Because I'm sure there's certain shows, and, maybe everyone out there can agree or disagree, but when you have shows like, say, The Walking Dead or Game of Thrones or the latest that I'm hearing about, and maybe I'm late to the party, you have your shows by Shonda Rhimes, you have your Scandal, and you have your How to Get Away with Murder. Now, aside from spoilers that people post online during the East Coast feed, where, the time difference between us and the West Coast, so people haven't seen it yet. Well, what happens if you haven't seen the show yet and people are tweeting about it or, saying all these, spoilers? They're like, hey, so-and-so just did so-and-so. So how do you insulate yourself from that and still enjoy the show while at the same time being able to talk about it with your friends? I'm curious to know. I mean, what's the time frame between when you watch a show and when you discuss it? I know at work, my friends and I, we always ask, hey, did you see, insert show name here? Maybe it's Game of Thrones when it comes back on the air. And the first question is, hey, did everyone see it? And if everyone didn't see it, well, then you can't really talk about it until, maybe 1 or 2 days later. And it's like, well, you better queue up your DVR and watch it. But I don't even think people know what day of the week shows come on anymore, let alone what the actual network's on, because DVRs are so sophisticated. You can just set it to record a particular show and say, hey, record all new episodes. Doesn't matter when it comes on. Doesn't matter what channel it's on, because you're going to get it no matter what. So I think that kind of takes away some of the wonder maybe of must-see or appointment television, because, you know, everything is on demand these days. You can kind of watch it in your own schedule. So it definitely impacts how you actually discuss it with your friends or even your family. And if you're living in the same house, heaven forbid you watch a show before your mate or your kids. You know, it's kind of like that unwritten taboo. It's like if you watch it, you have to pretend you didn't watch it, so that when everyone watches it, you know, you have to laugh at the jokes as if you haven't heard them before, or gasp at the proper moments. But of course, you have to practice this, because it's quite obvious when, you know, you're like, oh, I'm surprised that happened. And, you know, your wife or your husband or girlfriend or boyfriend or children are looking at you, and clearly they can tell that you weren't surprised by what happened. So you got to make sure you're careful when it comes to this. But I'd be curious to know what people out there think. Do you still watch shows when they first come on? Or do you just watch it when you can, because everything's been saved to your DVR, and then maybe you binge watch on a weekend, kind of similar to what people do these days with some of the series that are on Netflix. You tend to not watch one episode at a time. It's like, well, I have time to watch, so I'm going to watch as many episodes as I can. But let me know what you think. And maybe based on your comments or emails to the show, we will discuss it in a user feedback section coming in the coming weeks. So let me know what you think. Of course, you can follow me at multifariousman on Twitter, or send an email to multifarious.man.podcast@gmail.com. So that's enough of the first section, and coming up, we're going to discuss some of the returning TV shows that I'm interested in. Again, this is the Multifarious Man podcast, and I'll be right back. Well, that there was my attempt at playing King of Rock's guitar riff, that Run DMC song from the 80s. It seems to me that for a rap group, they really did use a lot of rock and guitar in a lot of their songs. I mean, aside from King of Rock, they also used it in Rockbox. And if you go back and listen to a lot of their music, it's not just driven by drum beats or Jam Master Jay DJing, but they use a lot of guitar riffs, guitar samples, and it's quite interesting if you think about it. But I digress. Now that we're back, I'd like to talk about some of my favorite shows that have returned. Now, a few of these, well, one particular, this is really, it's only its second season. The others have been around for a few seasons, and I just didn't discover them, well, until the past couple of years maybe. But some of them, it was discovery with my family, and now we actually look forward to watching them together. So some of those shows are Modern Family, which has been around for a while, and I've been a fan of it, but now my family has actually caught up to me. I'm not sure what season they're on, but we've seen them all, and now we look forward to seeing the new episodes. And you know, that comes on Wednesday night on ABC, and I want to say it comes on at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, local listings will vary. The other shows, which actually also come on Wednesday night that we've been enjoying as a family, are The Middle, The Goldbergs, and also Blackish, which is the newest show in that list, and in that this is actually its second season. Now, the middle is kind of straightforward. It's a Midwestern family in the middle of, fictional Indianatown, USA. It's mother, father, and 3 children, older brother, middle daughter, and younger son. And it just deals with the day-to-day mundane life that they deal with. All the different things that the mother goes through, the father goes through, trying to communicate with your kids, trying to stay close to your children. The 2 older children are both now at college. The youngest, I believe, is now entering high school. And it really just deals with, everything they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis and the humor that comes out of it. We like the show because a lot of the characters are relatable. And of course, a lot of the circumstances, things you deal with as a teenager in school, whether it's acne, whether it's dating, whether it's trying to fit in with other people. These are things that, my wife and I, of course, have gone through many years ago, and, our children are still discovering as they're getting older. So that's one of the shows we enjoy, and, in varying degrees, some weeks are funnier than other, but we tend to like it. And if we can watch a few episodes at a time on earlier seasons, we do, and we actually enjoy some of the laughs together. And the second show that comes on actually on that same night is actually called The Goldbergs. Now, we kind of discovered this show by accident. It just really didn't seem like something we'd be interested in. But it takes place in the 80s, and for my wife and I, growing up in the 80s, a lot of the humor on this show is, spot on. This show, of course, it's told by the point of view of actually the creator of the show, and it's based on, him growing up. Mother, father, grandfather live in the house along with him and his 2 older siblings. Older brother and sister. And of course, every episode begins, saying that it takes place on, May so-and-so, but then it always says 1980 something. So it deals with, all of the 80s pop references and, cultural references, everything from Milli Vanilli to a whole episode that was built around the older brother wanting to have a Tom Cruise party like he had in the movie. Goodness, I'm drawing a blank right now. Risky Business. Goodness, where's my mind? This is where he, in the commercials or the promos for it, he comes dancing out in his underwear to that old time rock and roll song. And there's a few bits in it where the mother, who likes to smother her children, literally gets involved in every aspect of their life. Tells the son, that there will be no Tom Cruising in the house, of course. So the humor is based on, the mother who wants to control every single aspect of her children's lives, and them trying to avoid her. And of course, the humor that sprouts from it. Father, of course, is loud, has a hard time relating to the children. And of course, the mother is the exact opposite. One loves them too much. One doesn't seem to show them how much he loves them, but it all works out in the end. And, one of the cool things I like about the show is because the creator has kept, it seems like, years and years of family photos and videotapes. He tends to, when he can, at the end of the episode, if there was something specific from his childhood that happened, he actually shows the actual footage of himself that actually he, developed that particular episode from. So that's actually pretty interesting. Modern Family is the third show that we really enjoy, and I'm not going to really touch too much on it because it's been one of the most popular shows, Emmy-winning shows on TV for, I believe, 7 years now. It's been a top show. All of the cast, receive accolades from the kids to the adults. And I think, the main thing is When the show started, I think the one person that everyone knew was Ed O'Neill of Married with Children fame. He plays, the patriarch of the family, and it deals with him marrying a much younger woman that has a son. In fact, the woman is younger than his daughter, and then his expanded family. So his son. So it's his son's family, his daughter's family, and, everything that's involved with the modern family. And it uses a technique that, probably, and maybe I'm wrong, was started with The Office, the British version, and of course the American version, where it's kind of like a mock documentary where the characters actually sit on a couch during the episode and actually speak directly to an unseen interviewer. And of course that, for me, I think that adds to the humor where, they show you one thing and of course they say something else or comment on something that happened. And I just think it's a really interesting technique that they use on these shows. And, I think it's pretty interesting and I like it. And I really don't have a problem with shows that do it. So that's Modern Family. The newest show on the list, which for me is probably, it touches more of a soft spot in my heart, I guess, is called Blackish. And it deals with a family that lives in California, and it's a upper middle class black family. Father's an ad executive, mother's a doctor, and their 4 children, older daughter, son, and then 2 twins, fraternal twins, a boy and a girl. And it deals with, well, what do you do as an African American when, you've made it to a certain point in life and you don't want to lose what you feel makes you culturally relevant. And so the father struggles, and of course, his parents or his father lives with them, and, he's old school. The grandfather's played by Lawrence Fishburne, and the father by Anthony Anderson. The mother is by, Ross. I can't think of her name. Diana Ross's daughter. Please forgive me that I can't think of her name right now. I'll add it in the show notes. But it deals with how they want to raise their children, when do you decide, well, what do you consider selling out? What do you consider being part of society? And it tackles some pretty relevant topics. The most recent premiere episode of the season was actually called The Word. And if you don't know what the word is, some people say the N word, whatever. And it deals with, their child, their youngest son, is in a talent contest, and he sings the unedited version of Kanye West's song Gold Digger. And I'm not going to repeat it here, but, I'm sure you've heard the song. And, the aftermath of him using what, in this school is, where, they have zero tolerance. And, the question is, well, if you're African American, what gives you the right to say this word? Should you say it? Should you not say it? Should you be punished for saying it the same way that a white student or non-African American student would? And, believe it or not, the show or the episode actually made some really good points from both sides of the argument. So it was touching. It was funny. I mean, my daughter and I, we really did laugh till we cried. Side-splitting laughter. And at the end of the day, it handled it, I believe, in a way that was quite effective. Because, what is the right answer? I think it gets people to discuss something, but, I'm glad about the fact that they were risking enough to, touch such a subject. And I hope they continue to do so. I think that's, one of the benefits of the humor that comes out of the show. Now, to change gears, I know I've been talking about just, a few shows that we watch as a family, but I also have, my guilty list of shows that I enjoy and, I'm going to watch, I probably watch them by myself. but I'm sure there are a lot of people out there watching them. And the first is called The Blacklist. Now, this show came on for the first time last season and came out of nowhere. Top hit, starring James Spader as basically this man was the number one on the FBI's most wanted list for 25 years. No one's been able to find him. And suddenly he shows up one day on their doorstep and says he'll only work with one person. And this young lady is a new FBI profiler. And from the beginning, he says, I have this list of, the worst people in the world. And I'll, share their names with you and help you catch them. But only if, you allow this young lady to work with me. So, of course, that's how it starts. Day one, immediately, there's a kidnapping, there's a child in danger, there's action, there's intensity, there's... James Spader is probably one of the most underrated actors, of his generation. But he has a quiet intensity. His character is charming. He's terrifying. He's loyal. He's disloyal. He's honest. He's dishonest. You never know what you're getting with him. But the connection between him and this FBI agent is really what drives the show. And, each week, they tackle a new item on the list. But there's a whole, overarching story that follows from, the first episode all the way through the end. And you learn more and more about what his relationship is to this young woman and why he chose her and everything that leads up to it. Now, there's a big reveal at the end of season 1, which I'm not going to speak to here. This is not a spoiler podcast. You can read up on it and, see what you want to do related to the show. I do recommend it. If you haven't seen it, you didn't see season 1, please find some way to stream it. I think, one or more of the streaming services out there that you probably already subscribe to has season 1 available. It's definitely worth catching up. There's Game Changer at the end of season 1, and now season 2 has started, and it has hit the ground running. Can't wait to see next week's episode. Definitely check it out. That's 2 thumbs up, 4 stars, whatever you want to call it. The Blacklist. Finally, the show that I really love hasn't started back up yet. Is a show called Grimm. Now, Grimm, it's a strange show. It came out the same year as, I believe, the ABC show Once Upon a Time. Now, these 2 shows approach fairy tales and that type of, genre from 2 different ways. Where Once Upon a Time, kind of, mines the Disney, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, that type of realm, and it deals with, well, what if all of them were real, but they lived in a separate town, but then what happens when that town enters our world? Grimm takes a completely different approach. So kind of based on the Grimm fairy tales, and, maybe you do or don't remember them from as a child, but these fairy tales are pretty dark. And in this world, a Grimm, what they do is it's through the years, Grimms fight these creatures in the night, your werewolves, your chupacabras, that type of creature. They're called Vesen. And in this world, they live right where you can see them, werewolves, everything. But only certain people can see them unless they want them to see them in their true form. Grimms can actually see them in their true form all the time, and their job is to hunt them down and defeat them. But in this story, the Grimm actually gets help by some of them, so they're not all evil. And his job, of course, his day job is he's a detective, and he has to distinguish between regular crimes and crimes created by these creatures. And there's a whole story world. There's a backstory. There's a whole quiet war that's going on between royal families, and somehow he's caught up in the middle. It's and what he is passed down from parent to parent, parent to child. So you're born into it, and your powers don't develop until much later. Now, the latest season has not started yet, but I'm really excited for it to get going. And finally, honorable mention, the DC comic shows that are on the CW, starting with Arrow, which has been on for a few years now, and now its partner show, The Flash. If you haven't watched these shows, I know they're on Netflix now. You got to catch up and watch them. Some of the best writing, acting, action sequences you'll find on television, and these are superhero shows. I can't say enough about how exciting they are. The Arrow starts off a little slow, but middle of season 1, it really starts to take off. Flash had the benefit of being brought to you by the same showrunners as the Arrow, and they learned lessons from the Arrow. So difference is Flash hit the ground and knocked it out of the park very first episode, and hasn't stopped going at top speed since then. Definitely check those out. They're on the CW network. Check your local listings. That's all I can think of for now. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of shows out there. I mean, let me know what your favorite shows are. And when we come back, we'll be closing out the show. Well, we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. It's been fun. I'm really enjoying it. Please spread the word. Let your friends know. If you've listened to it, please subscribe. Let other people know what's going on the Multifarious Man podcast. I'm learning as I go along. I'm, discovering new things, researching everything I can on the internet about podcasting and recording. And I hope that each week I'll deliver a show that you find entertaining, hopefully at some point interactive. And I hope you keep coming back. If there's something you want to hear about, or there's a show you want me to talk about, or movie, let me know and I'll gladly check it out if I haven't. And if I have, I'll definitely bring it on. In fact, I think there's a couple of new movies coming out that I'm actually, I hear people are excited about. One of which being The Martian, starring Matt Damon, which of course is based on a book that came out a few years ago to much accolade. It started self-published, and then it was picked up and optioned by Ridley Scott. So definitely check it out. That's coming out this weekend. If you see it, let me know what you think. I definitely love to get some feedback. Don't know when I'll get to see it, but it's something that's starting out, and maybe you've seen it already. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're just checking out Hotel Transylvania 2, or even Black Mass, which Johnny Depp, which I'm hearing is getting, a lot of accolades. He's apparently, some of his best work. But that's it for this week's episode of the Multifarious Man podcast. I thank you again for tuning in, and I hope to speak to you or see you again in the future. See you again, of course. It's a audio podcast, so we won't be seeing each other, but you get my point. That's it for today, and we'll check you next week. Oh, before I go, next week's episode will actually have my first Skype interview. We'll be interviewing an actor friend of mine I've known, for over 20 years. So I'm excited about that. So definitely tune in. We'll get to hear some stories about, being on movie sets with Will Smith. Yes, yeah, I'm saying it now. He was in Bad Boy 2. Or, whether videos or commercials and, some of the things that actors go through, whether it's from taking classes, whether it's performing on stage or going on various auditions. It's a business that's mainly about failure. Most of the time you don't get the job. And it's, how do you persevere? How do you continue to do it before you get the next job? So tune in next week. I think you're going to be some really interesting stuff on this interview. And I'd love to hear your feedback on how I did. This is going to be a recurring feature. interviews from actors, musicians, authors, people I've known for over 20 years or greater. There's a lot of talented people out there, and I'd love to bring them to your attention. So again, I will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Numerous and varied, greatly diverse and manifold. All the things I want to say that never been told. Dean and Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand, I'm the multifarious man.